recording this program, which is one of the reasons we ask you just to keep your cameras off, your microphones off during the conversation. Just a couple housekeeping things about Zoom. You have the option to watch the program tonight, either in speaker view or in gallery view. If you look at the top right corner of your screen, you should see where it says either speaker or gallery. You can click that to go back and forth. It's totally up to you. I recommend watching it in speaker view because that means the person who's speaking is going to take up the most space on your screen. And I think it's the best way to kind of watch one of these conversations. There is going to be a Q&A at the end of the program. There's a little chat box that you'll see at the very bottom of the screen. That's what we're going to use for the Q&A. You'll be able to chat your questions in there for the panelists. So we just ask that until we say, hey, it's time for the Q&A, you just hold your questions, write them down, and then we'll be able to facilitate the Q&A that way at the end of the program. There's definitely going to be time. And just again, if you're joining us right now, we just ask that you please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted unless you're one of the panelists. So thank you so much for doing that. Again, my name's Sari. I'm the Public Programs Director of MOFAD. And for those of you who are joining a MOFAD program for the first time, welcome. There's a lot of people coming tonight. This is super exciting. We do a lot of online programs now that, we're in the midst of a pandemic and we don't have a physical space to gather in. Before COVID, we had a museum, we had exhibitions, and for programs we would come together, we would listen to people talk in person, we would eat something and drink something. Unfortunately now, of course, we can't do that, but we have been finding other ways to connect like tonight. And it's so important and meaningful to be able to still gather in community, and we're so grateful and appreciate your attendance tonight. Like I said, we have a lot of programs going on at any given time. We have some next week. For example, we're doing a program called Indigenous Roots. It is a conversation and a cooking demo that explores the intersections and crossroads between Indigenous American cuisine and African American cuisine. You can find that on our website, or I definitely recommend signing up for the newsletter, which comes out every week, and we'll tell you what are the upcoming programs, and that's the best way to just kind of keep in touch with us. Like I said, our physical space is closed, but once it's open again, once it's safe to reopen, we have a beautiful exhibition called African/American Making the Nation's Table, which celebrates the African American contribution to American food. That'll be at the Africa Center in New York City in Harlem. So as soon as it's safe to do so, that exhibition is there waiting for you all to see, and we cannot wait to share the many, many stories that are contained within that exhibition. So thank you so much for joining us. It is absolutely an honor to be hosting this evening tonight with so many incredible panelists and with all of you joining us. So that being said, I want to turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves. I will be back later at the end of the program to help with the Q&A, but until then, thank you again. So why don't we start with Mr. Nuri, Rashid. Why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Rashid Nuri. So nice to have this opportunity to talk with so many people about things that have been of interest to me for a very long time. I've been involved with agriculture for well over 50 years, and all over the world. I've worked in 36 countries around the world. The beginning of my career was in urban agriculture, and towards the end of it, that is now the thing that I'm most focused on. And I think we'll get into some of the details as we get into the show.
Absolutely, thank you. Angie and June.
I'm Angie Provost.
And I'm June Provost, and we're some fourth generation sugarcane farmers from New Iberia, Louisiana.
Yeah, and we are on a mission to bring equity to our families, to our communities, and just share our story and hopefully create some change within policy networks and just equitable rights for us all as Black farmers and landowners.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Adrian, who's going to introduce herself, and then she's just going to start the conversation because she's going to be moderating tonight. So thank you, Adrian.
No problem. All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Adrian Lipscombe. I'm in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I am a chef and restaurateur. And I am also leading a project called 40 Acres in a Mule Project, which looks at preserving the legacy of Black agriculture and Black foodways. Tonight is a wonderful conversation that we're going to talk about Black farming and Black farmers and agriculture and what's happening today in the world. So my first question for y'all, first of all, welcome. Thank y'all so much for being here with us. I had the pleasure of meeting y'all earlier this week and having great conversation that we had to stop and we had to save it for this panel discussion. So I just want to start kicking off with, you did talk a little bit about your background, but I just want to go a little bit more into it to kind of just tell us your story of, how you got to where you are today. And then when we move into it, the questions will start coming out with the flow. So I'm going to start with Rashid, and then we'll go with you, Angie and June afterwards. All right.
Sounds.
Mr. Nuri?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm here.
Yeah. So tell me how you got into this world of agriculture.
Well, thank you for that. I'm a city boy to my core, but my mother called me her city-born countryman. And as a student, I was interested in the processes of national development. As an undergraduate, I studied the men and women who created the post-colonial world, which spans my lifetime. India, I was born in 1948, but I was conceived in 1947 when India got its independence from the British. My life has covered all of that period, and that's what I studied. But while I was as an undergraduate that was writing a paper on theory and practice, comparing the work of Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya and Julius Nyerere in Tanzania. They had very different systems that they employed. Tanzania was socialist and Kenya was very capitalist. Tom Mboya was the finance minister to Jomo Kenyatta. And in his book, he said that with all the technology available in the world today, there's no reason we couldn't chemically synthesize enough food to feed all the people. And I was very interested in health and nutrition, and that just totally was wrong. And at that moment, God spoke to me and told me to learn everything about food from the seed to the table. Prior to that, I've been trying to decide if I knew I needed a practical skill, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a carpenter so I can go into construction, or a printer to distribute written material. But agriculture was given to me, told me that's what I'm supposed to do. I heard and I began to obey. And that gave me a lot of freedom because I didn't have to figure out what am I going to do with my life. I was very clear. And that's where it began.
All right. Angie and Jim?
I like to say that we were born on the land. We both come from farm families. That means that we were both raised in and around folks from rural Louisiana. And, we are very much tied to our farm ancestral legacies. And June purchased this farm in 1994. Well, you took over your farm in 1994.
Well, actually, for me, it actually started when I was a little boy. Yeah. I mean, 5, 6 years old, riding with my dad in the truck. I mean, I idolized my dad. I wanted to be just like my dad. And when I graduated high school, the day after graduation, I went straight in the field. I mean, to get a chance to drive tractors next to your dad and your brothers, I mean, that's priceless. So in that same year, they trusted me with doing the most difficult jobs on the farm. So which is covering cane and cutting cane with the harvester. So I had a love for it. And that same year, I actually won high yield for the state. So after that, it was like, I got a bug, and it was just like, it was no stopping. So it was just the love of farming, the love of the land. I mean, it was unreal. And, and I had a small farm all the way until the year of 2007. Then I purchased my dad's farm. So, and it was a large farm. So I was close to 5,000 acres at one time. So, but again, to be in a field next to your family members, I mean, it's, that's memories I'm going to have for the rest of my life.
Well, thank y'all so much. That's really just skimming the top, really, of everything that I know about y'all. But I really want to get into talking about history and the history of Black farmers and how we got to where we are today, but let alone how has it affect what you are doing today in this world. So what do you think the role of the Black farmer is in agriculture? Anybody can answer.
Go ahead, Angie.
I say there's a duality to it, right? So we're highly valued, but we're also undervalued. I feel like at times we feel like a commodity within ourselves, like our bodies and our land feels like that it's been commoditized to where we are just objects at times, right? And a lot of those residuals from the days of enslavement to Jim Crow have transpired in today, and those issues have not been settled. The role of Black farmers today, I feel like we still have a long way to go to reclaim our legacy. And there's still a great deal of work to do.
And we're a dying breed. I mean, we're less than 1% of the farmers out there.
Right.
I mean, if we stay at this rate here for the next 5-10 years, there won't be any more Black farmers. And that's hard to take. That's some numbers that I look at all the time to see where we were, back in 1920 to where we are now. It's unreal, and and I always tell people, like, now with so much technology, I mean, tractors, it's an office. I mean, you have computers all in the tractor. And I want young kids to realize that it's not what you think of way back in the day, these old tractors. I mean, these tractors have air conditioning, heaters, radios. I mean, it's an office, really.
What I would add to that, it's people of African descent who taught America how to farm, particularly here in the South. All the crops and that we brought from Africa, the vegetables, rice. We have been the foundation of the building of agriculture in this country. And to add to what June just said, in 1910, Black people owned 18 million acres of land. This is after coming out of enslavement and captivity. And today it's less than 2 million. The number of farmers, the Industrial Revolution in America brought so many Black people out of the South up to the northern industrial cities, which drew people off of the land. You had the forces that worked against Black people continuing to own land were just immense. The U.S. government, U.S. Department of Agriculture is one of the biggest culprits in getting people off the land, taking the land back, so that decrease in ownership from that 18 million down to less than 2 million was a concerted effort to regain that land that we had gotten. I mean, and just so many incidences in the history which demonstrate this. What happened out in Oklahoma when they destroyed the city, bombed it, killed all those folks, and even throughout history, you can see where those attempts have been made manifest to get Black folks off the line. The county committee system worked, made it difficult for folks to get the money to grow the crops. And that was a major mechanism to recover the land, because you have to get your production money in February to buy your supplies. But if the county didn't give it to you till April or May, you're still going to try to make a crop. You end up forfeiting the loan, they take the land back. So there's just we can go through the history and talk about all the different things that had happened, but trust that there's a concerted effort to get folks off the land. That's why it's a beautiful thing to know this young brother here had 5,000 acres that he was farming as a young man. It's amazing. Here in Alabama and Georgia, I had the opportunity at a very young age to manage 13,000 acres on 3 pieces of property that were owned by the Nation of Islam. I was able to see how distinct, they tried to steal that land. My biggest accomplishment was keeping that land from being stolen, because they really wanted to do that. So there is a legacy, it's a history, and I hope we're able to overcome it. What is different today is 82% of Americans live in urban areas. And I think that that is the future. Small farms and urban agriculture, I contend, is the future of agriculture, so we can get back to the where people live, humankind live within walking distance of where their food is produced. And I think this pandemic has helped to heighten the contradictions that exist between big capitalist agriculture and small scale agriculture. If you remember back in the spring, they had pictures on TV of farmers tilling crops into the ground, into the soil. That's crazy. And because they couldn't make any money. The transportation system broke down. The distribution channels were frozen, so they could not get that food. And now with all the food that's being handed out and given, which is wonderful, is the way to remedy that problem. But the other side of it, one of the beautiful things about this pandemic is small farms and urban agriculturists have made more money this spring than they ever have. That's because
we're gonna get into that real quick. But I want to go back to the land comment,
yes, ma'am.
Especially when we're talking about Black-owned land. And if we just do like a quick small synopsis, and and I'm not going to do it justice, of Black people being brought to the United States or to America to farm and till the land, then we were released onto the land you're free, right? We're just free, with no identity, no ownership of land, but we worked our way to owning the land agriculturally, because that's what we did. We tilled it successfully. We created an economics and became farmers. So when you talk about stolen land and land being stolen, we're still talking from the 1800s to now.
That's correct.
Yes.
And I just want to kind of get into different ways that this farmland is being stolen. I think people are not really realizing that, land is not just being bought underneath people, but strategically ways of Black farmlands are being stolen. Can Angie and June, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, it's definitely theft, and we need to stop addressing discrimination as a civil issue. It's criminal, right?
Yes.
So literally to do things that really deplete someone's humanity, or to not treat someone as an equal human being, you are creating a criminal act. You are creating a crime against humanity. And what's happening is, and what has happened for over a century, is actual theft through discrimination, fraud, and other violent practices, right? And those violent practices are they can be physical, but they can be more insidious. They can be something that infiltrates your family through mental and emotional means. They can drain you in different ways, right? And so we have to really start addressing these issues properly. And also, one of the things that has drawn us away from the land. So once we started experiencing these horrific acts such as hangings, lynchings, etc. in the South, the Great Migration occurred, right? People were fleeing for their safety and for opportunity. And what happened is the building of the stereotype of what Black farming means, right? And so we got away from that. We tried to talented tenth our way out of things, and that doesn't work, right? So we need to start from the bottom up and recreate what it was that our ancestors have left us. And the real core of wealth building and community building, and I'm not talking about corporate raid and corporate pillaging, I'm talking about building schools and libraries and infrastructures for your community, and that's what I call wealth, right? All of those things started on the land. You talk about the communities of Arkansas, you talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, Thibodaux, Louisiana, where all these massacres occurred. Those were all rural communities, and they were building wealth for themselves. And so we really have to start calling out what these real things are. And as Mr. Nuri said, and we just follow and are grateful to be on this platform with him, because we want to carry on his legacy and others who have come before us. is that we really have to start being very honest about what it is we see for ourselves and what we demand from our officials, and holding these institutions accountable. Because it actually, like I said, these discriminatory practices are actually very criminal, and we have to start thinking about that in those terms. And when we don't address them seriously in that way, we have to say, well, what are we saying about ourselves as Black people? What are we willing to accept and not accept, right? And so, yeah, I think we really have to start taking those into account, those issues.
And on the ag part, like Mr. Nuri said, you know, as a Black farmer, if you're trying to get a crop loan and you need it in February, but you're getting that crop loan in May or June, you're doomed to fail, right? And that's what's happening. You either underfunded or you're funded like really, really late, and you can't come back from that. And that is what's happening to a lot of Black farmers. I mean, if they put you in a hole at the beginning, you won't make that up.
I mean, and yes, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
There was a special recently on CNN, United Shades, where they talked about family farms, right? And they showed the varying family farms in America, and they showed a Black farmer and they showed a white farm family, right? Everyone's having difficult times, but we've gotten this comment a lot where our issues are similar to that of small farms, or like farmers facing crises because of trade war. I beg to differ. We are going through a state of real physical survival, right? So it's not only just about pricing. We at times we don't have even the privilege to worry about what our crop is priced at, right? What
Right.
we're worried about is if we can safely get that crop to where we need to sell it to. And so those things are real issues for us as Black farmers. And I'm not here, June and I are not here to speak for every one of us, but we can certainly say that we've talked to quite a few folks in our community, and everyone has been suffering those same things.
And I see, you know, especially when we talk about the land ownership and the identity, I'm discovering, especially in Black land ownership that we have, that it was our community, it was entrepreneurship, it created, you know, it created the town. And so when I started reading about the violence that was occurring, like the physical violence, so we're talking about the massacres that were happening, it wasn't just the farmer, it was the farmer's family, it was the community itself, to the point that people just stopped talking about it, and it just quietly would just disappear. So, you know, we have many stories within our history of just physical violence, between lynching and destroying of whole communities and farmland due to farmers wanting to be treated equally.
Mm-hmm.
To be treated equally. And, you know, and as you come up to present time, you know, they're getting strategic. And they're strategic, you talking about the loans not being given on time. You know, even though you turn in the paperwork on time, you do double the amount of work as a white farmer needs to do to prove that you're able to produce and give back, and you still won't receive 100% of what you asked for, or 20% of what you asked for, and it being on time.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Nuri, can you talk a little bit about that, or a little bit about the USDA? I know we're getting into something thick, but you know, I think it's something that needs to be honestly talked about.
Yeah, you know, Mike Espy, who's running for Senate over in Mississippi right now, was the first and only Black Secretary of Agriculture. And while I was there, I was in the first Clinton administration, and we worked to address some of these issues, many of the issues. One, we did a disparity study, which was the predecessor for the Pickford suit that subsequently took place. But it was the county committee system that created the problem, because you had local people in those counties who were making the decisions about who was going to get the money and who was not. So if you, particularly here in the South, if you had, if the white folks didn't want you to have the money, that committee is the one that would make that decision. So part of what we did was a reconstruction or a reorganization of the county committee system so that more Black people would be involved in the process, and that would allow the Black farmers to get money easier than they had before we were there. And one of the, if you all remember, Shirley Sherrod, who's from down in Albany, Georgia, she was appointed the state director, urban rural development, and she got in trouble because of some lies that were told by what's that man's name? I can't remember, out of Washington, that she was talked about the discriminating against white people having access to the resources to grow their food, which turned out to be untrue. But with that Miller report that we did, and which showed very clearly the disparate treatment that Black farmers, Native American farmers received from the Department of Agriculture itself, plus the reorganization of the county committee system, were two of the things that we were able to get done at that time. And the study just made it very clear the Department of Agriculture discriminated against Black farmers for generations. And that got me in trouble and some other folks in trouble for using government money to prove that the government discriminated against folk. So it's clear that people know about it, know about the policy. And I gotta, Angie said that these behaviors are not civil, they are criminal activities that people have committed. I think that if the if the civil rights movement had been, we had made it not civil, people get slapped on the hand, but if we made it a felonies for the kind of discrimination to take place, it would have stopped a long time. Criminal activity, it would have stopped a long time rather than civil. So that's just a little bit of it. I don't know how deep you want to get into this.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I definitely want to bring it back, one more time to land, because I think this is very important. Let's talk about before COVID. First of all, why is Black land so important? Why do they want our land so badly?
Because it's very simple. All wealth, all health, all life begins and ends with the soil. All right, on any level that you want to look at it. So if you want to have true wealth, comes from the soil. That's why in a lot of places in the world, people don't even own the land. What's significant is the utilization of the land, what you produce from it, but the land is owned communally. You'll find this all over Asia and Africa. This country has property rights. My people were property at one point. So owning the land, having control of the land is essential to build any kind of wealth, to grow a community. You got to have a base. As you've already said, you have to have that base. But everything, all wealth, all health, all life begins and ends with the soil.
Exactly. Oh, that goes with saying that as we as Black people have become more, more of our families have moved to urban areas. We've gotten our advanced degrees. We have our corporate jobs, but steadily that wealth gap is still increasing, right? And as that wealth gap is increasing, we are still losing land, right? So there has to be a correlation there, right? So while we're gaining income, we're losing wealth. You cannot replace wealth for income. Income is not wealth, right? Income allows you to buy things, but you have to be able to recognize that the real purchasing power in gaining and retaining that land and actually taking care of it is where the real wealth and family development and community development lie.
Right.
That's why our land is so important, and that's why it is so sought after and wanted.
So let's talk a little bit. We're talking about before COVID, bringing it back, and agriculture itself. Is the system broken?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I say it depends on the context too, right? When you're talking about our legacy and our historical rights, it's broken. But if you're talking about government and institutions, it's doing exactly what they wanted it to do. Right?
Yeah. So
that-
I wanted to get it. I'm going to get into it a little bit more because I want to talk about perception, because I do work with the perception. So let's talk about the perception of Black agriculture. Is that system broken? How can we fix it? But then when you look at, because you brought up the CNN, and our problems, and I say our as Black agricultural farmers, their problems are completely different right now. They're struggling with something completely different than white farmers are, right? And we may have, at the top of it, we may have some similarities, but again, we're still struggling with the things that we've been struggling for centuries. And we're still fighting that, just in maybe strategically different ways, between violence, between not receiving our loans, not being able to till our land, not receiving seed, or even getting bad seeds. We've seen the articles about receiving bad seeds, versus right now, a lot of white farmers are concerned about what COVID has affected them. So how do you feel this system right now, the agriculture system before COVID, is broken, but how can we fix it?
I would say let's start with it takes policy change and a cultural shift. So for one, let's start talking about statute of limitation laws on discrimination. Let's talk about commercial lending rights, and also let's cancel Pickford debt, as our friends at Acres of Ancestry say, right? Because I can tell you that many of our families that have gone through the Pickford litigation, and Tim Pickford, he's a community organizer, right? But the legacy of what Pickford has done, it set precedents to prove that the USDA was discriminating against Black farmers, but there are still a host of issues that have not been properly settled. I like to call it the incomplete settlement. And, forgive me for saying this, but the firing Mr. Nuri is during that time is a testament to that. And all these issues with these farmers who still hold debt prior to Pickford but went through the lawsuit, those issues still deserve reckoning, still deserve a real policy action.
Pickford has two and plus iterations. The first iteration, Pickford won. Number one, the lawyers made more money than the farmers did. Farmers were limited to $50,000 of compensation, where the lawyers were able to charge by the hour, and they made fantastic amounts of money. They remedied that in Pickford 2, and there's a little bit of money that's left over now from 3. So the structural issues that Angie's describing were absolutely real, absolutely real.
So,
and just to
go
say,
ahead, June, I'm sorry.
No, and I was just saying, just for Mr. Tim Pickford, we actually got to meet him, I guess about maybe a year and a half ago, and I probably talk with him every 2 to 3 weeks. At his age, he still wants to farm. After all that he done went through, he still wants to farm to this day, almost 70 years old. As just to show you the love of farming. I mean, it doesn't get out of your body. I mean, it's always going to be there.
It doesn't leave your spirit at all.
Called being grounded.
Grounded.
If you meet somebody that's a little flighty, you say, well, he's not well grounded. Well, how you get grounded is put your hands and your feet in the soil, and you become grounded. So people like these young folks who have a 4th generation connected to the soil, there's no way in the world they're gonna get out of that. All right, y'all are so well grounded, and we need to have more than that. You were talking about some of the remedies to this. The capitalist system of agriculture doesn't work. You got that choked in the middle. I did a panel with Raj Patel the other day. He wrote a book called Stuffed and Starved, which is just really wonderful how he explains it. I'll just give you one example. Our president, Trump, was mad at China, cut back on the soybeans that China wanted out of this country. It was, and so the farmers could say farmers had a problem, but farmers don't sell soybeans to the Chinese. The grain companies sell to the Chinese. So the Chinese need soybeans, they got them anyway. And they got them from South America, the grain companies, Bunge, Cargill, ADM, they all got those soybeans from down there and shipped them over to China. It's the second time they did this. The same thing happened in 1980 after when there was a boycott against the Russians. It was the grain companies that choked the middle. You got farmers on one end, the consumers on the other, and the grain companies, food processors in the middle that determine the ebb and flow of the commodities. So the farmers in this country made less money because the American soybeans weren't going to China, but the Chinese got their soybeans from the same companies, and it was the farmers that got squeezed.
So now I'm going to move a little bit talking about, COVID. And how do you think that has affected Black farmers today?
What I've seen from my base here in Atlanta, it's been very difficult to get produce on a regular basis, sustained basis from Black farmers to go to the institutions that require it. You got an organization over here, Common Market, and Bill Green, we sat down and had a conversation that had trouble getting Black farmers to supply him because he is able to sell to institutions. So we need new structure, different structures, and so many have been tried over the years, but we haven't got it right yet. Federation of Southern Cooperatives works with farmers. When I lived in Louisiana, I worked with the Southern SCDF, Southern Cooperative Development Fund, built that farm up in Appaloosas. And I got to spend time going through the 8 Black Belt states here in the South, trying to organize the farmers so they could sell collectively. And we haven't got it done. The SAFON is an organization that's based here in Georgia, working with Black farmers as well, around organic agriculture in Georgia, as well as all over the South, as well as the Caribbean. So that's what's needed. We need to have mechanisms to collect the food where we can work together, building that cooperative effort. We do have a co-op out here in West Georgia who have been able to aggregate, collect food from a number of farmers and to sell it, because that they can offer truckloads of any one product to go to the institutions. So I think we, rather than just the engaging in the capitalist system of selling it to bigger people up the line and allowing those processors and grain companies to control, we need to have direct access to the consumers by the farmers and be able to do that collectively. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen during this pandemic is that, as I said earlier, the small farmers and the urban agriculturalists have had the best year they've had in a long time because the demand is there and they're able to deliver that food directly from the farms to the consumers. And I think that is the solution that I see. A solution, not the solution. It is a solution to the issues.
Yes, very much.
And I've seen this, what I've seen, especially where I'm located at, is we're starting to get hyper local, that we are cutting out the middleman and going straight from the farmer to the consumer. So we're missing the grocery store, we're missing that pass off from the farmer to the distributor. It's going straight, and it's been helped through social media, has been some of that main focus that I've been seeing that has been happening. But also I've seen this kind of a little bit of a revolutionary of Black youths wanting to get back to the land. And it's coming in a big wave where, I look at me, hey, we want to go back to the land and we want to tell and farm the land or understand farming more and where we have come from. So, what do y'all think, Angie and June, about this after, during COVID, like what's happening to Black agriculture and farmers?
I do have hope, but I also have a lot of concern when it comes to still the issues of our farms starting up, and things like FSA policies where they're saying, hey, we have startup farms and all of that, but we also need some real structural change to retain those farms, right? And I do think that the hyper-local movement is a step in the right direction, but I certainly feel like I don't want people to get comfortable in that. We certainly have to be very protected and represented in everything that we do. And that just comes out of our own experience in doing things. So like we work with commodity crops, but we also work with produce. So we see both sides of each of these issues that come about. And I think we feel like there certainly has to be a real look into the representations and the policies that are governing agriculture. I always tell people, look up the 7 CFR codes, right? And get to know what USDA policies are and make sure they're being enforced, and that those at our lending institutions and our ag schools are being held accountable in helping to sustain Black farms.
But I do think people are realizing the importance of growing your own food as well. I mean, you see people having like food shortages now. So to be out there and even if it's a small little garden, to be out there and growing your own food, I mean, it's rewarding. I mean, you're always gonna have food, you always need food, but it's also, and that's for me for the farming part of it, getting your hands dirty and planting a seed and seeing that seed grow. I mean, it's nothing better than that. Nothing at all. And that's what I want to just teach young kids. Like, plant a seed and watch it. Watch it in a few weeks. Watch it in a few months and see what you did. I mean, just that in itself is just rewarding. I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we're moving forward, I want to talk about, the future of Black farming. Where do you see it? Where do you see it today? Where do you see it going? And, what do we and the public need to do to help and support Black farmers?
Well, for me, I think the first thing, we need to keep that 1% or less than 2%, keep them still farming. That is priority. Keep them going by all means. And for me, what is really, really huge is trying to bring that next younger generation. Like right now, I should be training my nephews, how to come in and take over the farm. So we need to get more young kids involved and active, and especially if they have land, try to farm that property. I mean, just be active, because the world is always going to need food. So we always going to need farmers. So just try to just get that younger generation involved. And I know that might be hard to say. If they can say, well, I don't want to go with what y'all went through. But we have to fight it. We have to keep going. We have to push it. We have to push that envelope. We have to just make it happen.
And what do y'all think about policy? Like, what policies do we need, or like what we should be reviewing or bringing up to the front the forefront, so we can start talking about these to get these things addressed, especially for Black farmers?
I certainly think we really need to look at statute of limitation laws, and I think people really need to study on Pickford, the legacy of Pickford and what's happened. And I think we need to readdress those issues. And one of the things that I also believe is that we need to look into the 1890 funding of our HBCUs and how money is directed to our ag schools, and sort of the chokehold that's placed on them for actually helping out Black farmers, right? Because sometimes when we go to these leadership classes and boot camps, we can't even talk about certain issues or speak against the USDA because it's like the Great Wizard of Oz or something, right? And like, we cannot speak against that. We have to change those things. And it's not only about policy, but it's a cultural shift. It's up to everyone watching, everyone out there. We have to get our legacy organizations, the NACP, the Urban League, we need to get them speaking about Black farmers and land ownership. We frequent these banquets and these meetings quite often, and we have not heard anything about land ownership or Black farmers. It is if we are treated as pariah, and we have to change that. Because like Mr. Nuri says, the real wealth starts with the soil. Real wealth and health starts with the soil. I'm gonna use that quote all the time.
Right. Right. I'm gonna get that written. Yeah, we need to have that written out so people we know that. Professor, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Angie.
No, I was just saying that, yeah, it's not only about policy change, but it's a cultural shift as well.
Very much so. Mr. Nuri, I'm going to ask you about Pickford. Could you give us, we have a lot of people watching and listening, and they don't necessarily know what it is, what happened, why was it so significant for Black farmers? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I can give you a portion of it, but I think June is talking to Mr. Pickford all the time, so he can give you a break.
Well, both of y'all give us both some information.
There is a sequence. Back in the 80s, there was CRAT, Civil Rights CRAT Committee. I can't tell you what the acronym stands for, that was coming out of the Carter administration, that was pointing out the problems that the Department of Agriculture was having. We called it, the Department of USDA is the last and the greatest plantation in America. There's a lot of internal discrimination that have been suit after suit of how even the Black employees at the Department of Agriculture are discriminated against. And then Ronald Reagan shut that down, shut that process off. But what the Pickford did was Pickford suit. We did the Miller report. Dave Miller, I hired him out of Atlanta to do this report. He went around the country. The folks at the department were very upset at, take it back a little further. Ron Blackley, who was the chief of staff to Mike Espy, got a clause in the Farm Bill of '93 that required a disparity study. That was a coup in itself. That came my responsibility to execute that, and we proved it, that there was discrimination, but they buried that report so deep. Most people have trouble even finding copies of it because it was buried so deep within the department. They didn't want that information out. But it provided a platform, a basis for the Pickford suit, and Tim Pickford filing that against the Department of Agriculture when Secretary Glick, after they got rid of Espy, they had Glick came in. He was appointed as the Secretary of Agriculture. The suit was filed, as I said earlier. It was the lawyers who made the most money. The actual folks that had the discrimination made it very difficult to get access to any kind of, I want to use the word reparations. I will use the word reparation. To get reparations for the discrimination that had happened before, because they required paperwork that people may not have. I mean, they would lose their land, they would have all this debt, and they have to go back 20, 30 years to prove what this was. It's very difficult for the folks. And a man like Tim Pickford to stand up and have his name on the suit, and so many people, there were many who got benefits. They were able to get some money from the government, which was better than none, but they weren't made whole, as Angie said. And that's where the problem is, that debt is still lingering. People lost their farms, they owed money, and they never were able to pay it back, and couldn't, either lost their land or could not get any more land because of that.
And imagine what that does to farm communities. Imagine what that does to our families and to our persons, right? So we can speak here and talk about these things because it's those issues and effects are, they seep into our families and our livelihoods, right? Especially for the Black males in our communities. June's father, my cousin's father, on down the line, everyone in like nearly all of our dads, right, have passed away in their 60s. Black farmers are not retiring. They are dying out, right? Or they're being forced out and there's a slow death. And those issues of discrimination, that's why I go saying that those issues of discrimination are criminal. They are crimes against humanity. And so if we can start speaking about these things, holding our politicians accountable, holding our organizations accountable, and holding our institutions accountable, I think we can create real change in that aspect.
And going with Angie said, you know, I see videos sometimes with some white growers. They're, you know, could be 90, 95 years old, and they're saying like, we never retire. We always just gonna ride the hill and watch the cane grow. But you know, my dad and so many other dads didn't have that opportunity. I mean, you know, and farming is rough all the way around, but white growers have to worry about, you know, price, you know, or if you're going to catch a hurricane, rain, or drought. We have to worry about everything else. Survival. I mean, it's, you know, if we're going to get a crop loan, when we're going to get a crop loan, how much is that crop loan going to be? And going back to the USDA for the Pickford, same thing that happened with Tim Pickford is still happening till right now. And the same racist loan officers that were pointed out in the Pickford lawsuit are still working for the USDA now. So do you think they're going to change in 10 years, 20 years? No, they're still there now. So what do you think is happening? Nothing is going to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Uh-oh, did we lose them?
Froze up.
I think they did freeze up a little bit. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
take up the rest of what, little bit of an aside. I'm so proud to be able to hear people like Angie.
Oh, I think we can hear them now. Y'all froze up. Y'all broke the internet. Y'all broke the internet with you broke the internet a little bit because it was getting heated. We lost you when Angie was taking over. June had lit it on fire, and then you were gonna come in there and just tear it down. So
and what I tried to fill in the gap, now they can hear. Angie and June, I am so proud to see young people like you two have the fire that you do. You know, the work that my generation has done, is your turn. It's your turn to rule young people, next generation. My generation's done. Those two men running for president are too old. Need some younger people.
Thank you.
But it's so wonderful to hear the things that y'all are saying. You know, the paradigm that you're thinking from, and the issues that you are tackling, that most people don't have any cognizance of the dynamics that you are faced with on a daily basis. And to take up that mantle, to assume that leadership role, makes me feel good, lets me know that some of the work that we've been involved in has stuck. That somebody's getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I mean, it's been truly an honor to even get to talk to y'all about these subjects, because it's eye-opening to me. You know, you see it through history, but when you start reading it and you see that it's still happening to us today, that's what that fire of like pushing through. And I'm coming from a different perspective of being the consumer and being the chef, then that we're using these products and realizing that, you know, y'all are the first hands that get to touch our food and that gets to be put on our table. And if we do not support that, we will not have that on our table. So thank y'all so much for taking the time to talk to me about this. We have just about hit our hour mark, which I was expecting us to keep going, and we can keep going and talking about different experiences with Black farmers. I am so impressed with what we have survived from, and the struggle and the hustle that we're still doing today, even during a pandemic. But I see a brighter future for us. I see us, you know, connecting closer together and joining forces to be able to move forward out of this.
Very much so, Adrian, very much so. It's about the well-being of humanity. It is. It is.
All right. So I wanted y'all, before we move on to the questions real quick, we should do a little plugging. Rashid, please tell us about your book and where they can find it, because I already ordered mine before you sold out. So I think people need to order your book, because I'd
be glad to do that. I'm just ready to put that up on the chat. I wrote a book when I stepped down as the CEO of Truly Living Well. I wrote a book. It's called Growing Out Loud: Journey of a Food Revolutionary. And my colleagues and associates, I came up with the title Growing Out Loud, and they did the subtitle Journey of a Food Revolutionary, because I was hesitant to call myself that. But then I realized, a rebellion is when you burn stuff, you take down institutions. A revolution is what you put in its place. And that's the work that I've been doing, is trying to create the world that I want to live in, and I want to see my children and grandchildren live in. And so we grew here at Truly Living Well. We grew food, we grew people, we grew community. Grow. I get stumbled on that because I'm still the founder, but not the CEO. So my book is a polemic. I'm giving you my opinions. It's a tutorial. I'm teaching people about things that they may not know about agriculture, and it's wrapped around an autobiographical theme of how I've learned these lessons. So one of the things that I tell folks, I'm always going to give everybody an opportunity to learn from their mistakes, or they can save time and learn from mine. So that's the purpose of the book. You can get it from my website, which is the nurigroup.com, or you can, and that's the back, I'll autograph it for you. I'll sign it if you do it through the website.
All right.
And I hope that if I can do anything to help anybody, just give me a call. All my contact information is on the website, and it looks like Sari has put it up there so everybody can see it.
Right.
You're welcome. Thank you for that opportunity to sell my book.
No problem. Angie and June, y'all have a GoFundMe going on right now?
So we do. We have been working for quite a bit. We started the GoFundMe to save this house here, which we are gratefully raising money to save this property. But what we're also doing is looking at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture includes the Provost Farm, Heritage Center, and green space. And so what we want people to be able to do on this land that was purchased by June's grandfather is right before you head over to the Tabasco factory, which we're about 4 minutes away from, and pick up your hot sauce. We want you to come over here and learn about some real Black farming agriculture over here. And so, and we want this place to be a very safe space for all people. We want it to be a place that is where you can go. We think about it in terms of what we needed when we were going through our most difficult times and what we need now, right? So you can learn more about it on our website, www.provostfarmllc.com. And you can also go to our GoFundMe and support, and that is Provost Farm Cultivate Equity. And we just thank everyone for their generosity and their support. We are overwhelmed by the spirit of people, and just thank everyone.
Yeah, because for me, it wasn't all this, I couldn't smile like this at one time. So with all the support everybody has given us, I mean, that is what's keeping us going. Because when we lost our home, I was in a funk, and
it still is difficult.
It still is difficult.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is.
Difficult.
But I mean, I just thought I lost my whole family's legacy. I just thought I let everyone down. But talking about it is actually healing, and we appreciate all the support that has been given to us.
The reception from people has been quite overwhelming, and we thank you all.
Well, I thank y'all. So some of the things that I just want to kind of end this on, and letting y'all know that the Black youth, or the younger generation, which I am semi a part of, we're here. We would like to use, our experience and what we've learned. We were sent out to be educated. They sent us to college, but we need to come back home And we need to use what we've learned to help protect the legacy. So, I want to end it with that this is our legacy, and for us to make it sustainable and to continue on. And I mean, there's a bunch of questions coming in right now on top of the screen. So I'm going to turn it over to Zari. And if you want to start from there, we'll get those questions.
I think you have something to plug.
Oh, okay, a plug.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so yes, we have the 40 Acres Project. We do also have a GoFundMe. And like I said, we are here to preserve the legacy of Black agriculture and Black foodways, because they are connected. And I know Angie and June, we have to have a serious conversation to see how we can blend this together. So y'all see this world's gonna go around. Yeah, we're right here. So please do donate. Please donate if you can to both or to one of ours. We are going to be connected and working together. I'm saying that right now. The universe is talking to us.
Yes.
But also just keep an eye. We have a lot of things that are going in hand. We're talking 40 acres. It could be more. We are talking maybe splitting the 40 acres around the country. There's so much enthralled in what we're trying to do. But as, like I said, that younger generation, we're here and we want to go back to the land and we want to go and preserve it. So in any way possible that I can help in my sense of city planning, architecture, whatnot. I saw somebody who is in law school that just popped up and asked a question. So we are here. We have a lot of Black chefs that are interested. I mean, you're making our food. You are the first hand. Y'all are the architects of our food to that flavor. How can we help? And consumers, how can they help too? All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's a reason you're all on this panel together. This is no coincidence that, we brought you together for this conversation. So thank you, all of you, so much for your generosity and your spirit and your amazing knowledge. We've learned so much from you tonight. So I'm going to kick it off with the great Therese Nelson, who has a question for Mr. Nuri. She wants you to know she loves your book, and she would like you to talk about the organizational network of the Nation of Islam's growing program that you headed, because it seems so much of the distribution network you mentioned earlier that needs to be developed could take some cues and learn from the tactics that made that system so powerful.
Wow, that's a deep question. I'm gonna tell you why.
Well, she's a deep woman.
She is.
Yeah, the Nation of Islam, we had 13,000 acres of land, over 13,000 acres of land. Small farm, 160 acres up in Michigan, and then the 3 farms, 4,200 acre in Georgia, 4,000 and a 5,000 acre over in Alabama. So it was a collective effort. The money came from the people in the community to buy this land. The problem, when I came down here, I got no help whatsoever from the local institutions that are supposed to support farmers. They didn't want to touch us. Didn't know where to go to get money. Plus, I was very young and dumb. It was way over my head at the time, and that's what made it a wonderful experience. But unfortunately, the family of Mr. Muhammad in Chicago, and all of this is in my book, by the way. The family in Chicago, after Mr. Muhammad dropped his body, arguing over who gonna get what. And the land ended up going to probate court, and the very people who were trying to steal the land, and I prevented that from happening, ended up buying it anyhow. And so that large quantity of land was lost. And what happened years later, Minister Farrakhan came and bought the back third of the 4,200 acre farm, added another couple hundred acres to it. So there is still a Nation of Islam farm down in Georgia. So it was a collective effort that put together the money to buy that land. And it had all of the support for the farm, and the one that's there now had to come from the community and not from the Department of Agriculture. So there were a couple of lessons that I learned. That's an understatement. There were so many lessons I learned from that. One is how important it is to own that land, how important it is to preserve the land, and the necessity of the collective effort to make it happen. at one point here in Georgia, new communities, which were the Sherrods and the Nations Farm, were literally across the highway from each other, and Black folk owned 10,000 acres of land right here in one spot in those two counties, and they shut both farms got shut down, which is what the community wanted to have happen. They didn't want to see Black folk controlling that much land. Did everything I could. The Sherrods, it took them, I can't tell you how many years it was, but they finally got a settlement for what happened to new communities. And okay, that was back 30 years, 35 years, and they ended up getting a nice piece of money so they could go out and buy a plantation down there in South Georgia. So that's just some of the stuff I learned.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We have a question for someone about resources, where to donate money. Obviously, the organizations that you just heard from, both of the GoFundMes, and then blackculinary.com is also an excellent resource with books about reading about Black farmers past and present. Okay. How can high volume restaurants start to bypass distributors and get direct access to farmers like you? Adrian, I think you should start with that because you're a restaurateur.
It takes work, to go past distributors because they'll come to your door. I mean, the distributors are easy, right? They come to your door with a list and you ask, you tell them what you want, they pull it up on their computer and you're able to order it. Here, you have to develop a relationship. You develop a relationship with the people that make your food. You have an understanding of what's being grown. You can even go and visit these farms and get to see the animals that are being produced or the produce that are being produced, and start talking to the farmer about custom things that you may want on your menu. It takes work. It's not going to come easy. The first time when I did it, I just put a call out asking for farmers, and it was social media. So to me, that was easy. Put a call out. Ask for farmers in your area, ask them what they grow, because let me tell you, farmers are willing to talk about it. They want you to know they're proud of what they grew, and they will be proud to serve it for you on your table and to your customers. It's bringing the farmer to the table, not the farm, but you're bringing the farmer to the table to be a part of the meal and part of the planning of your dishes at your restaurant.
Yeah, anyone else want to chime into that?
The most restaurants that do farm to table are in cities. This is why I'm promoting small farms and urban agriculture as a solution for the future. And young farmers, when they're getting started, it's wonderful to be able to connect with a restaurant and establish that relationship, and that'll help them. They have one place they can go with their food. So it's the direct connection. Same what we were talking about earlier, avoiding the middleman and the brokers, and just going directly. You have to knock on the doors. One of the things we haven't discussed, there's so many things we haven't discussed, but farming is tough work. It is not easy.
Right.
Okay. You're working hard. If you're a proper farmer, you're working can't see to can't see. You got a whole lot of these young people get out there. Problem I have with Truly Living Well, they come and work looking at their watches and want to know when is break time and when I can go home. You gotta understand, we're gonna be there. We're gonna be there. You get your rest in the winter when the days are shorter. But now this time of year, oh Lord have mercy, it's can't see to can't see. Back to the question that you asked, and just going directly to those restaurants is how you're going to get that done. And the urban farmers have a easier opportunity because they're right there where the restaurants are.
I like to add to that also is that we need to stop looking at farm to table as elite. Like it is, we need to dismantle that myth. I mean, our food are coming from farm. It just is how it's distributed to you or to your plate. So, working with the farmer and understanding your pricing, understanding why you're choosing to go this route, and working with your farmer to create a long-lasting, sustainable relationship. As things like this is happening in COVID, my restaurant's not suffering. We're not suffering the loss of part of the food chain because we worked with our farmers. So, you know, as you see, different restaurants are struggling at this moment, and distributors are having an immense amount of food going to waste. We're not having that issue. So developing those relationships and, you know, and knowing your product and what you can do in the survival and working those seasons, it has helped us tremendously.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, this is from Jim. As a third generation white farmer and landowner in the West, what can I do knowing that my generational wealth has come to me at the expense of Indigenous people and Black farmers? Any example that you know of white farmers working towards restitution? Angie, June, maybe you want to weigh in here?
I think that many white farmers can do what they do with their counterparts, right? So like reach out to Black farmers and Indigenous farmers and talk to us and establish relationships with us. Go to dinner with us and lunch. Go to community sponsored events, meetings, and all of that with us. Share information and share knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes that we may not be aware of. There's been so many incidents where we've been shut out and the door has been closed to us when it comes to access of information, just on basic like USDA programs that are available, or what the sugar mill may be doing that particular season. We have been left out. And I think part of the beginning steps is establishing real direct relationship with us as farmers, not the nonprofits in our names, not the organizations in our names, but us as people and individuals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to that?
I guess that's me. No, ditto.
Yeah, I would like concur.
Yeah.
You know, that's half the, you know, questions that I get is, you know, how many Black farmers are there, or how do I contact a Black farmer? It is reach out. I mean, social media has brought us so much closer together and has brought me closer to so many Black farmers. Just, they have internet. I mean, you know, a good percentage of them do have internet. So being able to just reach out, pick up the phone, call the farm, and have a relationship with them from farmer to farmer. Again, you know, white farmers have a little bit more privilege, or a lot more privilege than Indigenous and Black farmers do. And we're in small numbers. You're the person that asked the questions in the West, and I'm in the Midwest. So knowing that what's happening here, you know, there's not that many. We have a very low percentage of Black farmers here that you can probably count on one hand in the state I'm in. So, you know, being able to reach out and talk to the ones that are counted by one hand, that's easy. That's easier said than done.
And give them money.
And give them money. Give them land. You know,
Preparation. Yes.
Give them land.
Yeah.
Okay. As a Black law student, deeply inspired by the Black farmer food sovereignty movement, and also committed to the movement for reparations, how can we get plugged into organizing efforts around these policies in cases like Glickman? And how can young Black folks who want to start gardens and farms in the Southeast Louisiana learn skills from the Provosts?
Wow, that's a multi-layered question. So I think that let's start with the latter half. How do you get started in farming, and what do you do? Go outside and plant something.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that's the start.
And I'm just a phone call away, because if you want to learn something, I can teach you. So just I'm a phone call away.
Many of us as Black farmers, so a lot of times we live in rural communities, and some of us are isolated from, like, you know, what's going on mainstream. Reach out to us, right? You can reach us on social media, as Adrian was saying, or just by someone who you may think knows us can get us the messaging. But going back to starting farming, go outside and plant something. Go to the USDA office, and let them see your beautiful Black and brown faces, right? And say, hey, I'm starting a farm. I need a farm number. Look into your rights. learn the USDA civil codes, and just get started that way, just gaining lots of access and knowledge, and surround yourself with a lot of really great people who really have a real intent on seeing us and helping us thrive. And there's still a lot of work out there to do. My answer is a little bit incomplete because the work is still incomplete. And so, yeah, there's still so much work to do. And if you're a law student, please know that we need lawyers, civil rights lawyers, in every single field. It's not just Black farmers, but we need civil rights lawyers for everything that's out there right now. So most definitely, yeah. So.
Great. Rashid, do you want to comment on getting plugged into organizing efforts and policies?
Oh, there are just so many organizations. I mean, I saw a question up here about the land loss, land theft. The Federation of Southern Cooperatives, based here in Greater Atlanta, has an emergency land fund. Savvy Horn up in North Carolina is working on land prevention. There are just lots of organizations throughout the country, most that I don't even know about, who are talking around these issues of land loss, land loss prevention, and helping people to do so. The internet is just such an amazing tool.
Yeah.
If you just plug in that phrase, you're going to come up with a whole host of organizations who are claiming efforts in that area. I talk about the Federation because they have a large reach there throughout the South, and they work around the cooperatives. So that would be the place to start.
Yeah, and I just want to say that these organizations really need extra funding, more specific funding, right? So, and I speak to that because of the movement that's happening, and you see all these corporations making these Black Lives Matter statements and donating to places, to our legacy organizations. But I feel like some of our other organizations that are out there are missing the funding. And what that does is that money is not directly reaching the Black farmers, right? So our organizations, we're getting together, but there's still more work that needs to be done. There are still many farmers out there that need restitution and reparations. And so it's really imperative, as Mr. Nuri said, to really reach out to these organizations and ask them specifically what they need, right? And if you're not getting a complete answer, find directly some Black farmers to reach out to and see what it is that they need as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Angie and June, you can keep speaking, because there is a specific question about where to get legal help in dealing with the exploitation of family land theft. Where did the both of you start?
So we actually found our attorneys. It was a long, hard road, because like I said, there is a lack of civil rights attorneys or attorneys that will fight, banking litigation or anything in regards to fraud or racketeering, those types of things, right? So it took us many years to find the right attorneys, but we got that by searching through and getting through organizations. It was in 2017, we went to a Farm Aid concert. We were invited there and got introduced to the Rural Coalition people and National Family Farm Coalition. And that was actually Savvy Horn's connection brought us there. So Savvy always said that she and June are cousins. So we actually found our attorneys through that pathway. It does take a village. I will say that. It is not easy to find legal representation or to have someone accept and respect your story as truth. So yeah, it's a difficult journey. So I encourage any attorneys out there to go through ag litigation, right? And I also have to shout out Jillian Hishaw, who also helped us find our lawyers as well. So,
and for the person who said, it's gonna be a fight, but don't give up though.
Don't give up. Yeah, don't give up, because once you find your family unit and your support, it will pay off. Yes, the times are difficult.
It's worth the fight.
Yeah, but it's worth the fight. It's been a difficult but rewarding journey for us. Yeah.
Where do you all see, or have you seen, or do you envision education in schools and teaching children playing a role in all of this?
You know, that's what we truly live well, is the training and education center. That's exactly what we've done. In the urban side is my focus. We got farm to school programs. Georgia Organics has helped really establish that farm to school program, giving awards to schools. But the children is where everything begins. No, let me correct that. It's so important to connect the children to this work. As June said much earlier, just seeing a seed grow, come up out the ground will excite the children. I had children bring their parents to the farm, and they are so excited. Said, "Mommy, Daddy, what? I grew this. Go buy some of this food so I can eat these vegetables." I mean, that's where you connect. You got so many organizations here, Captain Planet, putting in 500 gardens at schools. The schools themselves taking on their own gardening programs. So absolutely, begin with the children, because you can, all the things that they can learn, science, math, history, around that garden. It's just really important that we focus on the education.
I would have to say ditto on that also. I'm truly involved with Grow Lacrosse here with children and gardening. Also, when looking at 40 acres, we talked about education and talk about legacy, but also the traditional methods that our Black farmers today have been passed down from generation to generation. It was by act, it was by watching, it was by stories. How do we still collect those legacies and about traditions and then pass that on? It's going to be through seeing and doing. So being part of 40 acres are part of that legacy is not only just seeing and hearing it from the farmer, but also practicing it on land. And, and for us, you start small, you create those sensory gardens, you create those salsa gardens for the kids and such, but it's also the understanding of what you do with the food you grow. And I think that's a huge disconnect that we have a lot of, is what do you do after you grow those 90 radishes? You can plant them, you love to grow it, but what do you do with it after? So in understanding that process, I mean, I can't be the only one who goes to the farmer's market and buys way too much, and then you go home and you don't know what to do with it, So talking about that preserving and the fermentation process and the cooking process and the freezing process of understanding what we do with our food, that we go through the process of growing it to eating it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. We got work to do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think this takes us to the end of our evening, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to add before we wrap up.
It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation, and to reiterate, to see these young people picking up this mantle and running with it, Adrian, Angie, and June, it's just very rewarding for me. People see young people getting excited about this and being impatient. I've been doing this for, like I said, over 50 years, and talking about organic urban agriculture, people think I'm crazy now. You can imagine what they thought 50 years ago, because the conversation hasn't changed. So I salute all of y'all.
Well, we thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thank you all.
It was an honor. We are so thankful.
And I feel like we got so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
We're
so
not
much
done.
more to talk and so much to do. So I would just tell people just to keep an eye out and stay in contact with us as we continue on. You know, bringing us together to have this conversation is just one step. And we're laying the foundation for a lot of future work that we'll be working together. I mean, if we're talking about this now during a pandemic, wait till you see what we do after.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, first of all, we're going to do this again in person when African/American is open. So we have that to look forward to. It's going to be a very different conversation in some ways and probably similar in some ways too. But I can't wait to be with you all again. I will send a follow-up email to everyone tomorrow. So all of these links that have come through, everything that was mentioned will be in that email, and also the recording of this conversation. So you can watch it again if you missed part of it. And please, please, please share as much as you want. It's free. This was such an incredible conversation and just so critically important. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Adrian, thank you for moderating. Amazing job. Angie and June, you have inspired me since I met you back in February. And Mr. Nuri, what an honor to have you know, your 50 years of wisdom and experience be part of this conversation. So thank you all for joining us at MOFAD. We're so grateful. I hope all of you will come back for more online programs, and please do support everyone that you heard speak tonight. And that's it. If you have any questions, please just let us know at MOFAD. And most importantly, please just continue to stay safe. Wear a mask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
MoFad, Mary, and Adrian.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
And you all.